Here's the truth about starting weighted calisthenics. That is, linear progression is not always going to work, especially if you've been training this way after 6 to 12 months. So in this video, I'm going to help you understand what linear progression is and also what you should do instead. So linear progression is one of the most common ways for beginners and people who just started working out in the gym to train. In fact, it's probably one of the most simplest way to identify progress for beginners. And also, by the way, when I'm saying beginners, that means you have no more than 1 year of training within the gym. So remember that. So some ways to implement linear progression is to do more than what you did last time, whether that's by increasing the number of repetitions, the number of sets, or the amount of load that you're working with. Now, this all leads to progressive overload, the process of building muscle and improving your strength. For example, if you're doing a training block that consists of about 8 weeks and you can only currently do about 3 sets of 5 pull-ups, but your all-time goal is to do 10 pull-ups for 3 sets. So let's say for that first week that you train, you were only able to get 5 reps. On the second week, you train and you only got about 6 to 7 reps. And a couple weeks go by and you're able to get that 10 rep goal. Now, congrats. That's linear progression in its most basic form. Now, the only variable that we kept changing was the amount of reps that we perform on the pull-ups. And also, the biggest reason as to why you were able to make such fast progress within a short amount of time with the pull-ups is because you've never really stimulated your body with the pull-ups before. So basically, this exercise is new to you, and any kind of programming that you did is just going to overall benefit you. Because remember, beforehand, you weren't doing any pull-ups. You weren't stimulating your body within this particular way, right? So hear me out. The rate of progress is going to be slowing down if you keep doing the same training methods, especially as you make more progress. Now, that's called depreciating returns, because the same programming that you've done to get your first 10 pull-ups is not going to occur to get your next 25 to 30 pull-ups, right? And I'm talking in the sense of like how quickly you can progress. So it's going to be a lot quicker for you to progress to get to those first 10 pull-ups, but it's going to take a whole lot longer and much more effort to get those first 25 to 30 pull-ups, especially like the last 5 reps. Like if you're doing 20 to 25 pull-ups and your goal is to get 30 pull-ups, those last 5 reps is going to take some crazy programming and dedication. So hope you're following along with me right now, because we're about to speed things up just a little bit. Now, let's say a couple months go by, maybe even a year, and you got a solid pull-up of say 15 reps for 3 to 4 sets, and you're interested in doing weighted calisthenics. Linear progression is also a good starter choice when starting weighted calisthenics for beginners. And remember what I said, linear progression is perfect for beginners. And if you're just now starting weighted calisthenics, which is a different style of training in terms of understanding where your strength capacity stands and overall exercise execution, if you haven't been doing it for close to a year, then you're pretty much a beginner. So the best way to improve in weighted calisthenics as a beginner is to focus on strength training. Now, let's say, for example, you can only do a weighted pull-up of 5 reps with 20 added pounds. And your near time goal is going to be 5 reps again, but for 90 pounds. Now listen closely. Then the only variables that we're going to be changing to implement progressive overload is the number of sets and also the amount of loads that we're going to be working with. So pretty much we're going to be keeping the reps the same, because if our goal is to get 90 pounds on the weighted pull-ups for 5 reps, then we have to focus on training for 5 reps, right? Specificity is key right here. Now, perhaps some of you might have started your weighted calisthenics journey by implementing some of these strength principles by training the 3x3s, 4x4s, or 5x5s. Now, what I recommend, and I think a lot of people within the niche of weighted calisthenics themselves would say for beginners to start doing the 5x5 set of rep scheme. Now, it's really important that you want to keep the amount of loads that you use throughout the entire set scheme the same. But the only difference is when starting a new training block, we want to start with only using 3 sets and aim for 5 reps, since 5 reps is our all-time goal, with a load that allows us to stay within that same set and rep range. After you accomplish that, then the following week, you want to increase the number of sets to 4. So now we're doing 4 sets of 5 reps. Now this may take a week or two, but the point is you want to get 5 sets of 5 reps with the starting load before you increase the load. So this method right here works for beginners because it's just enough volume and intensity to build muscle and strength. But more importantly, it's giving them enough sets and practice to perfect their technique and increase their overall strength capacity without having to train to failure every single set. Because the reality is, it's very hard for beginners to train to failure, or better yet, grasp how to train to failure without compromising their technique and form. But training to failure every set isn't always necessary as long as there's a linear progression in variables that directly correlates with progressive overload. And as I mentioned before, that's going to be either changing the number of sets that we do or the amount of loads that we're working with. Now, training this way isn't something that you're going to be doing forever, right? Especially as you become more advanced in that particular training method and you start putting on more loads and more stress on the body. So think about it this way. Doing the straight set 5x5 approach has time limit, and that's anywhere between 6 months to about a year of programming. And this is all because you've built your overall work capacity, the total amount of work that you could do within a set time. So in this case, the amount of work that you could do would be considered the amount of loads that you're working with. And then the set time would be a workout session, or to be more specific, a particular set within the actual workout. And we all have a limit in terms of how much effort we can exert, but that doesn't mean we can't necessarily train and increase that level of effort. But training with maximal effort can be tricky, especially if you're doing a lot of volume, which if done for an extended period of time will immediately cause negative repercussions. So let's say, for example, your 5 rep max is 90 pounds, and that's you working at about a 9 to 10 RPE. Then if we're truly working within the high level of intensity, right? 10 meaning it's super hard, 1 meaning it's easy, then there should be no way that you should be doing that same load for that same number of sets and reps, let alone if you're doing it for 5 total sets. Like, that's just not possible. So let that sink in, because this next bit of information is gonna be really important. That means the way we've been training using the 5x5 scheme was using more of a moderate intensity of no more than 7 or 8 RPE for consecutive sets. Now, this doesn't mean it's suboptimal, because we're, again, purposely not training to failure every single set. But the way that we measure progress is taken in a bigger context, which is to hit 5 total sets for 5 reps with a constant weight before increasing the load. Now, this doesn't mean that you won't feel gassed or sore. In fact, because I mentioned you're not used to training till true failure using heavy loads, as you increase the number of sets and eventually loads, you're slowly increasing your true RPE and working much closer to your work capacity. That said, here's what you should do instead. Start by using the top and back off set method. The top set meaning this is going to be the heaviest load that you're going to be using within a particular set. And a back off set meaning you're going to be reducing the amount of loads that you're doing from your top set. Anywhere between 20 to 25% reduction is what I typically do. Now, Cobra, why are we reducing the amount of loads from our top set? Wouldn't that make the exercise feel a little bit easier in terms of intensity? Yes, but not exactly. Going back to our initial reason to why we transitioned to this method is because we can now gauge what training to failure truly is on an exercise without compromising technique and form. The top set should be heavy and should feel very hard. The back off set should be a bit lighter, but it should also feel just as hard. One way to make sure that the intensity level stays relatively consistent is by increasing the reps or tempo on your back off sets. For example, if I'm doing a top set of 3 reps, then for my back off sets, I can increase the number of reps. Or another way to keep that intensity level the same is if you're doing a top set of 3, then your back off sets can be also of 3 reps, but this time each rep is going to have a 2 to 3 second hold at the bottom portion. For example, the dip, you're going to be holding at the bottom. For the chin up, you're going to be holding at the top. So that's going to be increasing the tempo, which is going to be increasing the difficulty of the exercise. Just doing this immediately is going to make the load feel just as heavy. But the most important part about this is that it's not going to be taxing your joints or central nervous system by reducing the amount of effort that you could put for the rest of your session or even the upcoming sessions by overworking beyond your work capacity. But hey, what do I know? If you'd like to see more content like this, be sure to follow me, man. I'm the Tough Fitness Scout here. No cap.
Cobra Trains, he's up next. Make sure y'all subscribe to him. He's number 1 out here.
He's the toughest fitness guy out here.